Imagine the bone-chilling desert wind cutting through Tucson, Arizona, late Saturday, January 31st, 2026. Darkness had completely swallowed the massive Catalina Mountains. It felt like an ordinary peaceful evening, but a looming nightmare was silently approaching. Countless stars blanketed the area over the quiet foothills. Down below, trusting locals kept their front porch bulbs glowing warmly all evening. Perfectly manicured potted plants decorated peaceful backyard decks. In this idyllic community, danger felt entirely foreign. An 84-year-old lady exits a vehicle and casually strolls inside her parking bay. The heavy metal barrier shuts precisely at 9:50 p.m. and suddenly she completely disappears. Which sinister events unfolded over the following 4 hours and 38 minutes? The nation remains absolutely captivated by this horrifying mystery, while baffled detectives desperately hunt for concrete answers. We plan to break down every single passing second and crucial clue. Somewhere within that crucial time frame hides a devastating revelation, and the public undeniably needs to hear the unvarnished reality of the situation. Here lies the chilling tale of Nancy Guthrie. To grasp the tragedy of that evening, you must realize she represents far more than just another anonymous kidnapped victim. We are discussing a deeply religious, 84-year-old matriarch. This loving grandma was forcefully dragged away from her ultimate sanctuary, the exact spot she deserved to feel completely secure and protected her beloved residence. Originally named Nancy Long, she poured endless affection into raising her kids. She remained the ultimate supportive parent, constantly cheering from the front row. That recognizable surname connects directly to her highly successful daughter, Savannah Guthrie. Millions watched this prominent anchor every morning broadcasting live on NBC's Today Show, and Nancy served as her proud, loving mom. Despite Savannah's legendary on-air poise and remarkable emotional strength, nothing could possibly brace the famous journalist or her tight-knit relatives for the unspeakable horror awaiting them on February 1st, 2026. Residing solo near Tucson in the peaceful Catalina foothills, the 84-year-old relied upon a surgically implanted heart device and struggled immensely just to put one foot past the other. Local authorities eventually confirmed she lacked the physical stamina to independently cover 50 yards. Unassisted late-night neighborhood walking simply remained out of the question for her. Getting lost or voluntarily fleeing contradicted her entire nature. She strictly followed her daily habits, attended church regularly, and welcomed frequent check-ins from deeply caring relatives. Tragically, that highly predictable schedule likely transformed her into perfect prey. Keep that unsettling notion firmly planted in your mind, as we will circle back to it shortly. A sinister stalker monitored her habits. An unseen intruder studied the property. Evil eyes lurked nearby. Let us rewind the clock to Saturday, January 31st, 2026. At 5:32 p.m., the elderly matriarch launches a rideshare application and orders transport. Her destination was a pleasant supper at her eldest child's local residence. Annie Guthrie Keone shared this nearby household with her loving spouse, Tommaso, and their kids. Nothing felt out of place. The devoted grandmother habitually attended these intimate evening gatherings. Using hired cars was standard practice. The chauffeur delivered her safely, kicking off a wonderfully typical, cozy family get-together. They shared tasty meals, cracked jokes, reminisced about recent winter festivities, discussed Savannah's broadcasting career, and praised the little ones during a perfectly ordinary weekend reunion. Detectives subsequently interviewed the chauffeur, who noticed absolutely nothing suspicious regarding the brief trip. Following several enjoyable hours together, the meal concluded, and at 9:48 p.m., Annie's husband, Tommaso, escorted his beloved mother-in-law into his vehicle for the return journey. Pay close attention to this seemingly minor, yet critically important fact. Her dedicated son-in-law refused to carelessly leave her on the street corner and dash off. Police records confirm he lingered patiently outside. He vigilantly monitored the property, idling his engine, until the automated barrier completely her safely inside the structure. The motorized gate locked away at 9:50 p.m. Tommaso remains the final individual to witness her breathing. By 9:50 p.m., the elderly woman stood securely within her quiet suburban refuge. Everything appeared securely fastened under a veil of total neighborhood silence. An unaware observer would assume the area was utterly peaceful and completely devoid of danger. However, the terrifying reality shatters this illusion, as an unseen threat had already breached the perimeter. A sinister plot had secretly unfolded over several days or weeks prior to her fateful arrival. The devastating truth simply remained hidden in the shadows. Allow me to detail the confirmed facts surrounding the agonizing gap separating 9:50 p.m. and 1:47 a.m. Those chilling moments preceded the security lens mysteriously failing. Law enforcement files contain virtually zero evidence. Nobody signaled for help, and passing motorists noticed absolutely nothing suspicious. Nearby residents heard no commotion whatsoever. We will address those failing surveillance lenses shortly. However, retired detectives have confidently shared a deeply concerning hypothesis across media channels lately. This particular logical deduction has rapidly gathered substantial momentum among experts. The ruthless kidnapper never acted impulsively under the cover of darkness. This abduction completely lacked the chaotic hallmarks of an opportunistic spur-of-the-moment assault. Instead, it resembled a highly sophisticated tactical strike. The perpetrator executed a cold, meticulous strategy, having clearly researched the target with terrifying precision. Ponder the chilling implications of such premeditation. Orchestrating this flawless vanishing act requires intimately tracking her departure times. The intruder memorized her return schedule. They meticulously mapped the property's blueprint, locating the rear fence of the outdoor deck and every single entry point perfectly. Defeating the digital lens required technical expertise. The culprit recognized the medical telemetry device exploited her solitary living arrangement and preyed upon a frail senior entirely incapable of sprinting or defending herself. Retired officers appearing on news networks theorized such flawless execution demands approximately 3 weeks of intensive spying prior to February 1st. 21 days spent lurking in shadows, diligently cataloging her daily rhythms, mundane customs, and physical limitations. Brace yourself for a genuinely terrifying revelation that sent cold shivers directly down my own spine upon discovery. Shortly before the kidnapping occurred, multiple laborers freely roamed throughout her private estate. Various tradesmen handling shingles wiring and climate control enjoyed unrestricted entry. These strangers easily surveyed the boundary without triggering suspicion. Federal agents heavily investigate each hired repairman today. Detectives relentlessly interrogate any individual granted physical entry to the premises shortly before the harrowing events of January 31st. Handcuffs remain unused presently, yet police firmly suspect a cunning kidnapper potentially disguised themselves as a blue-collar technician to secretly scout the vulnerable environment beforehand. Let that horrifying concept marinate in your mind temporarily. A supposed repairman tweaking a ventilation system might have secretly strategized a midnight raid, plotting exactly how to rip a fragile, 84-year-old grandmother right out of her slumber. Such ruthless, calculated malice practically guarantees professional involvement over clumsy rookie mistakes. Let us transition into the concrete, agonizingly precise chronology regarding the late-night horrors unfolding into February 1st. The bay heavily seals shut at 9:50 p.m. Her son-in-law departs, leaving the elder alone indoors. Mystery still shrouds her initial domestic activities during those immediate post-arrival moments. Picture the chilling tranquility of her final evening. She likely slipped out of her evening wear, brewed some warm tea, watched a bit of television, and quietly whispered her nighttime prayers. Her devotion was absolute. A pillar of her local congregation, her absence at Sunday Mass sent immediate shockwaves through the community as everyone instantly realized something terrible had happened. She simply sank into the familiar rhythm of an empty home. It was that deep, comforting stillness that only follows a genuinely fulfilling day. Yet somewhere out into the pitch-black streets of Tucson, a shadow was creeping closer. Nobody knows the exact moment this intruder breached the invisible boundary of her property line. Did they leave a vehicle idling nearby, approach silently on foot, or wait patiently in the shadows? They might have watched the lights extinguish one by one until nothing remained but the faint blue pulse of a medical monitor glowing from her bedroom window. Here is what is undeniable. Right as the clock struck 1:47 in the morning, they had arrived. 1:47 a.m. marked the exact second Nancy Guthrie's security camera died. Listen closely because this detail is absolutely crucial. The camera did not just die from a random power failure. There was no technical glitch. Detectives and subsequent FBI analysts confirmed that a masked, gloved intruder deliberately severed the device's connection. On February 10th, federal authorities publicly released surveillance video which was miraculously salvaged from Google Nest's backend systems. This wasn't pulled from local memory since the device lacked a paid subscription, meaning it was programmed to automatically wipe its own files. Fortunately, tech engineers collaborated with federal agents to extract ghost data lingering on the corporate servers. And what that hidden file revealed was purely terrifying. A disguised shadow with gloved hands creeping up to the lens and severing the feed. I must pause here because this specific element is undeniably huge. The intruder possessed enough tech savvy to realize unplugging the unit would blind the feed. However, they completely failed to anticipate that the tech giant might secretly hoard residual cloud data. This reveals a critical oversight. It points to a perpetrator wielding dangerous technical know-how, but definitely lacking true professional mastery. Regardless, that salvaged clip provided the first undeniable proof that this was no tragic accident. Nancy Guthrie never simply wandered off into the night. A predator hunted her down. Federal agents dropped that video on February 10th, exactly 9 days following Nancy's vanishing. The frame captures a shadowy form at the door roughly 5'9" to 5'10" inches tall. They were of average build, heavily disguised, and hauling a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiking backpack. That is a Walmart exclusive brand. Detectives immediately pulled the retailer's sales logs to hunt down the purchase. Early audits indicated the bag was likely acquired from a completely unrelated location. This heavily implied an untraceable cash transaction lacking any receipt, leaving authorities with absolutely zero breadcrumbs to follow. Let that detail sink in. The backpack. Why lug a bag to an abduction? What was hidden inside? Intricate burglary tools or heavy-duty restraints? Detectives have been agonizing over that exact mystery, and even now the public remains completely in the dark regarding the answer. 1:47 a.m. The feed dies, plunging us into a terrifying 25-minute blind spot. We absolutely know a predator was inside that home, yet we remain entirely blind to the unfolding nightmare. 25 agonizing minutes. Really process the true length of 25 minutes. That is plenty of time to slowly creep through the entire home and easily locate the master bedroom. Enough time to violently subdue a victim. Plentiful time to ensure absolutely nothing gets left behind. 25 agonizing minutes of dead silence that authorities have desperately tried piecing together. Suddenly at 2:12 a.m., exactly 25 minutes after the blackout, the software triggered a motion alert. A human figure was spotted. Without a paid subscription, the system utterly failed to capture a continuous unbroken video stream. What detectives and federal agents miraculously salvaged from the corporate servers was that vital snippet. It showed the disguised intruder the exact same phantom who sabotaged the lens at 1:47. They grabbed just enough data to form a basic profile. Stature, body type, and the hiking bag, yet zero facial features. No getaway vehicle was ever confirmed. Here is what veteran federal agents publicly noted regarding this terrifying gap in the timeline. Sabotaging the lens at 1:47 only to trigger another motion alert at 2:12 points to a handful of deeply disturbing scenarios. Perhaps the attacker prowled the perimeter, scanning the shadows for nosy neighbors or hidden security setups. Alternatively, it might indicate a tense period of hesitation or even tactical synchronization. That specific phrase, tactical synchronization, keeps surfacing in professional breakdowns of the crime, as multiple detectives suspect this was never a solo mission. The terracotta planters flipped the entire narrative. Allow me to break down those flower pots. This particular bombshell emerged weeks into the hunt, sending absolute shockwaves through the true crime community who had been obsessively tracking every single update. Savannah Guthrie personally verified this chilling fact during her emotionally raw sit-down on the morning broadcast. Upon reaching their mother's residence that fateful Sunday morning, the sisters discovered her missing, while the rear entrances stood wide open. They were not merely unlocked nor slightly cracked, but intentionally wedged apart. And the makeshift doorstops Nancy's beloved garden planters. The kidnapper, or a sinister crew, grabbed Nancy Guthrie's decorative pots right off the rear terrace, utilizing the heavy ceramic to physically wedge open both the screen door and the backyard fence. Veteran journalist Ashley Banfield, the one who unearthed multiple critical bombshells regarding the mystery, delivered the news with palpable heartbreak during her broadcast Drop Dead Serious. He weaponized the gorgeous planters she undoubtedly spent countless hours lovingly tending to on her patio, twisting something deeply beautiful into a tool for his sinister scheme. Why wedge the exits wide open? Why leave them totally exposed? That specific puzzle has sparked fierce debates among seasoned detectives and obsessive internet sleuths. Consider the primary hypothesis. Hauling an 84-year-old victim, a frail woman, totally incapable of walking 50 yards unassisted, would require both of your hands to be completely occupied. You cannot simultaneously carry a human hostage and hold a swinging door. Therefore, you wedge it open. You calculate your escape route in advance. You map out the grim logistics of dragging a body through the dark, ensuring zero noise is made, nothing is dropped, and no scene gets caused. Then there is the much more sinister angle. Those exits were wedged apart to welcome an accomplice. Perhaps a getaway vehicle rolled up to the rear alley under darkness, allowing two separate assailants to haul Nancy Guthrie from her sanctuary, while her own gardening pots kept the escape route totally unobstructed. To be absolutely clear, authorities have never officially verified this. However, the tangible crime scene markers, specifically the deliberate placement and functional use of those heavy planters, have convinced several retired police veterans that this abduction was undeniably a heavily coordinated group effort. We finally reached the most terrifying timestamp of this entire case. 2:28 a.m. At exactly 2:28 in the morning, Nancy Guthrie's bedside pacemaker completely failed to send out its scheduled transmission. Please fully grasp the sheer gravity of this revelation. When I first processed this detail, it sent chills down my spine, unlike anything else in this entire investigation. Nancy relied on an implanted pacemaker, a life-saving device constantly tracking her cardiovascular rhythm. That chest implant transmitted signals straight to a bedside terminal, which was wirelessly synced directly to her cellular device. Clockwork precision was the expectation for that medical device, broadcasting her vitals to ensure her heart kept its steady rhythm. But at 2:28 a.m., the signal abruptly died. When a pacemaker misses its routine sync, the list of possible culprits is terrifyingly short. First, someone could have simply switched off or grabbed the mobile device. Second, the transmitter got dragged out of range. Third, a thief snatched the handset. Finally, Nancy might have been violently pulled far away from her lifeline. Every single one of these scenarios points to one chilling reality. Right at 2:28 a.m., the peace of her home was shattered. Nancy Guthrie had vanished from her own bed. She was completely separated from her mobile. There was absolutely no way for that life-saving equipment to function as intended anymore. 2:28 a.m. marks the final digital footprint we have of Nancy Guthrie. What followed the suspiciously wedged doors, the dead air from the monitor, and the eerie vacancy greeting her relatives that morning all screamed the exact same horrific truth. Sometime between 9:50 p.m. and 2:28 a.m., an intruder breached her sanctuary, and they didn't leave alone. Let me paint you a vivid picture of the cops' initial discoveries because the physical evidence speaks volumes. When Annie and her husband Tommaso pulled up to the property on the chilly morning of February 1st, tipped off by a concerned parishioner around 11 a.m., about Nancy missing church, they immediately sensed something was terribly wrong. The rear doors were jammed open. They quickly phoned relatives and tore through the property. Emptiness. She was just gone. By 11:56 a.m., her family officially declared her missing. The frantic 911 call dropped at 12:03 p.m. By 12:15 p.m., Pima County deputies flooded the scene. They launched aerial drones. They brought tracking hounds. They thoroughly scoured the entire neighborhood. Authorities executed every standard protocol for those chaotic early hours of a disappearance. Yet the grim aftermath they uncovered gave Sheriff Chris Nanos all the devastating answers he needed. Facing the press, he didn't sugarcoat a single word. Detectives were thoroughly convinced she was violently abducted from her residence, most likely under the dark cover of midnight. She couldn't even manage a 50-yard stroll alone. There is zero chance she simply wandered out her back gate at 2:28 in the morning. An intruder hauled her away. Let's discuss the blood because the forensic interpretation of those gruesome stains has shifted wildly over the course of the ongoing probe. Early whispers claimed crimson spots stained the front entrance of the property. However, fresh evaluations from top-tier bloodstain pattern experts who analyzed the data reveal the drops actually started from one pinpoint location indoors, forming a highly specific and controlled vertical downward trail. This specific formation changes everything. Straight down drops, rather than chaotic smears or splatters, heavily imply an injured victim being hauled upright or tossed over an attacker's shoulder while bleeding. The crimson droplets mapped out the exact route the kidnapper took from deep inside the residence right to the exit point. She was actively losing blood. She was totally immobilized and someone's firm grip violently hauled right through her own rear exit. Roughly 2 miles down the road from the house, cops stumbled upon a pair of discarded black gloves dumped carelessly near the Catalina Foothills subdivision. Detectives immediately shipped those gloves to a specialized Florida laboratory for genetic testing. Authorities are keeping a tight lid on whatever those specific results uncovered. Still, the mere discovery of those gloves, perfectly matching the shadowy figure caught on the porch, Cam strongly suggests a high level of forensic awareness from whoever orchestrated this crime. Leaving no prints was the goal. Whether they realized the gloves themselves contained damning DNA, that is the ultimate mystery. Cops also uncovered a possible boot impression perfectly matching Ozark Trail footwear. Unsurprisingly, that's the exact same manufacturer as the mysterious knapsack. Detectives are still battling to figure out if this is a random fluke or if the suspect deliberately bought their entire kidnapping kit in one single shopping trip. Now let's pivot to the initial evidence collection. While everyone fixated entirely on the demand letters and grainy security tapes, the messy site preservation might actually be the most crucial element. Several weeks deep into the hunt, shocking rumors leaked that the primary detective assigned to Nancy's file had barely 2 years of active experience. Just 2 years of service handling a blockbuster mystery that instantly drew federal agents and completely dominated national headlines as a premier missing persons hunt. Global media coverage and complex clues demanded elite forensic mastery, yet they relied on merely 2 years of experience. While speaking with the press, prominent forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Petler suggested that the physical crime scene at Nancy's residence was likely heavily mismanaged and improperly secured during those crucial opening hours. Vital clues probably vanished. Dusty footprints could have easily been extracted using advanced electrostatic imaging tools. DNA transfers on the welcome mats, or microscopic fragments, clinging to handles and jambs, were probably trampled over or completely ruined before experts could bag them. That massive investigative blunder is a permanent scar that absolutely no future lab wizardry will ever be able to heal. Let's pause the deep dive into clues and focus entirely on the devastating emotional reality unfolding behind the scenes while detectives ruthlessly scoured the property. Savannah Guthrie shines as a completely iconic titan in the national broadcasting industry. She has literally gone toe-to-toe with commanders-in-chief. She's commanded intense political showdowns. She has navigated national disasters, heartbreaking tragedies, and the messy American narrative with absolute poise and dignity. But on the dawn of February 1st, 2026, her world completely shattered. she transformed into a terrified child, missing her mom, immediately abandoning the anchor desk. She completely bailed on anchoring the 2026 Winter Games, skipping what normally would be a massive career milestone. Instead, she paced her living room, desperately pressing detectives on the phone. Sobbing through raw social media clips, she directly begged the kidnappers for mercy. She promised a massive payout for doing the right thing, pleading only for a simple sign of life. They desperately needed evidence that Nancy was breathing. On February 2nd, barely 24 hours after the vanishing became public, a local Tucson news desk caught a chilling digital ransom demand. The message established dual ultimatums, 5 p.m. on Thursday, followed by another cutoff on Monday. This financial extortion was the kidnapper's debut contact, a grim fact later corroborated by relatives who also got threats. During a gut-wrenching late March sit-down on morning television, Savannah confirmed her absolute certainty. She firmly believed those terrifying crypto demands sent to the press originated directly from her mother's actual abductors. She insisted they were ready to hand over the cash. Relatives launched a $1 million bounty for their matriarch's rescue, with outside contributions that war chest eventually swelled to $1.2 million. Then a subsequent letter delivered a completely devastating blow. The cruel writer coldly declared that Nancy had been killed. Savannah tackled the horror head-on. She publicly announced they would gladly fork over the ransom just to bring her mother's body home. Imagine the sheer willpower required to utter those heartbreaking words on live television. Try to comprehend the absolute nightmare her loved ones have endured since February 1st. Those digital currency threats threw a massive wrench into the probe, sparking fierce debates among seasoned detectives and seasoned crime experts. Allow me to break it down. The very first extortion threat landed at that local broadcast station on February 2nd. Out of nowhere, mysterious letters started flooding into TMZ and various newsrooms in the ensuing weeks. The anonymous author insisted they held the key to identifying Nancy's abductor. A specific message alleged the captive woman was spotted breathing and well across the border down in Sonora, Mexico. However, a subsequent dispatch, perhaps penned by that exact individual or someone else, entirely retracted everything. It chillingly declared that Nancy had tragically passed away. Fast forward to April 2026, when TMZ secured a pair of fresh messages, supposedly from that initial source. This time, the extortionist wanted half a Bitcoin up front for details on the culprit, expecting the rest after cops made an official bust. Factoring in daily crypto swings, that requested fraction of a Bitcoin equals roughly $40,000 to $70,000. Ex-Federal Bureau of Investigation official Jennifer Coffindoffer hasn't held back her thoughts regarding this bizarre correspondence. She is utterly convinced these tabloid ransom demands are nothing but a shameless grift. Basically, some opportunists caught the headlines and decided to milk the tragedy for cash. Her logic is simple: the actual abductor gains absolutely zero advantage by contacting a gossip site. If the true perpetrator desired a payout, they'd privately approach the victim's relatives instead of sparking a massive press frenzy that only invites heavier federal heat. Even so, Coffindoffer floated the idea of authorities using a method called tickling the wire. By transferring half a Bitcoin to the extortionist's wallet agents might provoke a trackable digital footprint back to the crook. This isn't because she trusts their intel, but rather because nabbing the fraudster would tie up loose ends and save precious detective hours. Currently, federal law enforcement remains tight-lipped on whether they actually executed this crypto trap or anything comparable. Right now, we need to pivot and discuss a pair of individuals who temporarily dominated the spotlight during this nightmare, since this marks the exact moment where media speculation horribly clashed with the actual police work. Meet Carlos Palazuelos, a local courier hailing from Rio Rico, Arizona. Late in the evening on February 10th, exactly 9 days post-abduction, cops initiated a traffic stop just outside Tucson. Palazuelos happened to be riding inside that specific car. Authorities immediately took him into custody. Meanwhile, investigators executed a judge-approved raid on his Rio Rico residence. Officials from the Pima County Sheriff's Office released a brief update verifying the property sweep while withholding deeper context. As expected, online sleuths went into an absolute frenzy. Several hours passed before deputies let Palazuelos walk free. He left the station, instantly stepping into a massive reporter swarm camped outside his property. Speaking to the journalists, he confessed, "The whole ordeal petrified me. I am completely innocent. Honestly, it felt like they were abducting me. They kept me entirely in the dark." The man reiterated his simple life as a courier, swearing he possessed zero knowledge of Nancy Guthrie and maintaining his absolute innocence. Police later stated they grabbed Palazuelos strictly due to vague tips, not actual hard proof. No criminal filings ever materialized. Detectives shifted their focus elsewhere. Enter Luke Daly. On February 13th, heavily armed tactical units swarmed this man's property. The 37-year-old former convict, boasting a rap sheet filled with narcotics and firearm violations, found himself handcuffed alongside his 77-year-old mom. Cops interrogated him before cutting him loose. They questioned and freed his mother too. During his initial broadcast sit-down with True Crime Arizona, Daly bluntly stated, They got the wrong guy. I am completely unconnected to this tragedy. He explained how he racked his brain trying to understand the sudden police raid, yet kept drawing an absolute blank on any logical justification. Forensics teams successfully gathered genetic material from Nancy's residence, yet no official biological connection tying back to Daly has ever been disclosed. By the time Court TV aired their early March segment, detectives had officially abandoned their pursuit of both Palazuelos and Daly entirely. Let me tread lightly regarding this topic. Cops only held these guys temporarily without filing official charges. Ultimately, both walked away. When dealing with such massive scandals surrounded by intense societal outrage, relentless journalism and nationwide sorrow, ruining an innocent person's life becomes a terrifyingly high probability. Our job involves stating undeniable facts. Authorities grab these guys and eventually let them go. The official paper trail stops right there. Yet a disturbing reality remains. Once officers officially exonerated Palazuelos and Daly, the manhunt practically reset to absolute zero, leaving the federal agents to grind away at dead ends. Genetic samples remained under laboratory review. Simultaneously, specialists kept painstakingly analyzing those mysterious footwear impressions left behind. Those recovered gloves sat inside a Florida facility. That promising knapsack clue totally fizzled out. Those crypto demands proved utterly bogus. And devastatingly, Nancy Guthrie remained vanished. Let me clearly illustrate the exact environment Nancy Guthrie called home, since location means everything in mysteries like this. The Catalina foothills definitely isn't some gritty slum. Honestly, you would never associate this pristine zip code with violent break-ins or terrifying abductions. The affluent district rests slightly above downtown Tucson, nestled perfectly along the rugged foothills of the Santa Catalina Mountains. Picture sprawling cacti gardens, silent avenues, immaculate mansions, and a tight-knit vibe where locals actually wave hello. Nancy absolutely belonged there. She was known for keeping her garden flawlessly manicured. She was the neighbor who'd warmly gesture from her passing vehicle. As her heartbroken daughter tearfully declared on primetime television, she consistently brought the brightest energy into absolutely any gathering. Ultimately, the horrifying disconnect between her radiant personality and her grim fate makes this entire tragedy incredibly difficult to mentally digest. Detectives meticulously scrubbed through a nearby resident's doorbell footage. They also heavily scrutinized various municipal intersection monitors planted around the vicinity. Yet somehow, even with this massive tech web, those countless hidden lenses everyday suburbs passively install, not a single device captured an identifiable shot of the getaway ride hauling Nancy Guthrie off. Zero cameras caught her tragic departure. The very community meant to stand guard went completely dark during the vital time frame stretching from 1:47 to 2:28 in the morning. That specific clock details a sinister reality. The attacker, or perhaps a group, purposefully targeted that exact window, not merely owing to Nancy's slumber, but knowing fully that motion sensors deactivate residents dream heavily, and the boulevards sit completely deserted. It provided the lowest mathematical odds of any bystander or security lens spotting their evil deed. 1:47 to 2:28 in the morning, inside a peaceful subdivision. The dead zone, the phantom hour. We truly need to highlight her local congregation right now, as those faithful members earned massive respect within this narrative. Practically speaking, they served as the very first warning siren. Faith wasn't just a hobby for Nancy Guthrie. It was the absolute bedrock of her existence. She never skipped a single Sunday service, rain or shine period. The entire congregation counted on seeing her familiar face. So when that usual spot sat empty on the morning of Sunday, February 1st, alarm bells immediately went off. Whispers sparked action, leading a concerned friend to dial her relatives around 11 in the morning. Notice the crucial timeline here. Relatives called emergency services at 12:03, and officers arrived at 12:15. Yet that rescue sequence kicked off entirely because her spiritual community paid close attention. Those friends recognized the glaring red flag of her missing church and refused to brush it off. Those opening moments absolutely make or break any disappearance investigation. Lightning-fast reactions boost the odds of a safe rescue, keeping tracks fresh and stopping getaway cars long before crossing state borders. Despite lacking official authority, that incredibly alert congregation undoubtedly shaved precious hours off the ultimate police deployment. When lives hang in the balance, every passing second carries weight beyond measure. Witnessing such deep intuitive care truly strikes a powerful emotional chord. Modern society constantly complains about deep isolation and the tragic death of neighborly bonds. Yet these Tucson believers proved otherwise by immediately intervening when their friend vanished from her pew. That kind of devotion is massive, and it deserves massive praise. We really need to pivot back to the actual crime scene clues now. The media frequently glosses over hard science to chase sensational headlines, but these facts matter. Looking at all the physical traces collectively unveils a chillingly calculated sequence of events. Let us analyze the blood. Discovering those precise straight-down droplets, isolated inside the residence, points to a specific nightmare. The victim was clearly bleeding while being transported in a vertical position. The attacker likely hoisted her up or carried her in a manner that produced a neat trail of drops, completely avoiding chaotic splatters across the floor. We can deduce a massive clue from this setup. Nancy definitely wasn't dragged out horizontally. The trajectory of those droplets heavily implies she remained elevated or tilted upward for a portion of her terrifying exit. Furthermore, the sheer physical proximity required for that lift guarantees the perpetrator caught some biological material on their own garments. Hand protection cannot completely prevent indirect smearing. Those contaminated outfits might still exist somewhere desperately waiting to be uncovered by detectives. Next up is the whole saga involving that smart camera video and the monumental recovery effort. Federal agents teamed up with tech giants to extract hidden digital footprints from remote databases. Without a paid plan, that local hardware was absolutely destined to erase everything. The internal memory was looping and deleting itself. Thankfully, the corporate cloud retained the files, gifting investigators a timestamp of 1:47 in the morning and crucial suspect details. Pulling off that digital miracle stands as a crown jewel of forensic technology here. It almost failed. Discovering hand coverings 2 miles away from the property provides a massive break for investigators. Genetic profiling nowadays borders on magic. Just a tiny skin flake, a hair strand, or microscopic sweat inside the fabric is enough to generate a suspect identity. Authorities shipped those crucial items to a specialized Florida facility for processing. Officials remain completely tight-lipped about the findings. This total blackout means one of two things. Either the database hit came back empty, or detectives are playing their cards close to the chest. Either scenario makes perfect sense, holding drastically different consequences. Now we must confront a highly uncomfortable truth about this ordeal. We have to address the glaring police blunders. Handing a high-stakes abduction over to a rookie with a mere 24 months of experience, especially right before federal agents and global news crews swarm the town within 48 hours, is a massive issue. Pointing fingers at a single cop solves nothing. Precincts battle massive hurdles, empty rosters, boundary disputes, and the sheer randomness of what goes viral online. Nobody at the local sheriff's office woke up on the 1st of February expecting to stumble into a global spectacle. However, top-tier experts publicly criticized the initial handling of her residence. They firmly believe the property was left dangerously vulnerable during those crucial opening moments. Crucial clues ranging from shoe tracks and DNA to microscopic residues on entryways could easily have been trampled without proper barricades. During major abductions, those opening moments inside the perimeter represent a golden window you can never duplicate. Investigators get a single shot at securing untouched clues. Blow that fleeting opportunity and you cannot rewind time. This woman was owed flawlessly executed police work. Every victim deserves top-tier competence, and Issue National Radio highlighted. Nancy's terrifying disappearance perfectly highlights the agonizing limbo forced upon thousands of American households, battling this exact same nightmare every single year. Yet nearly all of those heartbroken relatives survive on breadcrumbs, completely denied the massive funding, manpower, and camera lenses focused here. Let us face the harsh facts. This particular tragedy dominated the airwaves solely because the victim gave birth to a television superstar. Stardom unlocked endless doors, federal backups, a bounty of $1.2 million, and global headlines. The average desperate family cannot access that leverage. Your typical disappearance falls onto underfunded town cops battling zero press coverage and absolutely no societal outrage to keep the search engines revving. Nobody is saying this intense focus is wrong, as she warrants every bit of the hustle. We simply need to harness that exact same fierce dedication for the forgotten victims lingering in the shadows away from the cameras. No matter your bloodline or your zip code, every single vanished human being commands that identical level of aggressive, relentless pursuit. Should any silver lining emerge from this nightmare besides bringing her home, I pray it is this. My ultimate wish is that society totally rewires its approach to vanished citizens, residential protection, senior vulnerability, and the absolute duty we hold toward those agonizing in the unknown. 73 agonizing days. That is the exact span of her absence as we wrap this film. 73 brutal sunrises where her child opened her eyes to uncertainty. 73 weekend services staring at a vacant wooden bench. 73 pitch-black evenings with a silent heart device. The absolute truth remains locked entirely between 9:50 at night and 2:28 in the morning. Scattered clues like smart doorbell clips, spilled blood, overturned planters, discarded handwear, and dropped signals all perfectly expose those 4 hours and 38 minutes. A completely ruthless phantom navigated that exact time frame with chilling accuracy, executing a masterfully orchestrated plan. The smoking gun remains patiently dormant right now, perhaps sitting among laboratory results, buried under police paperwork, or waiting upon an anonymous phone tip. At 84 years of age, our frail victim lived delicately with a heart implant and struggled to stagger even 50 paces alone, making her a truly baffling target. A deeply sinister individual zeroed in, deliberately plotting a flawless midnight abduction over several weeks without dropping a single clue, which requires absolute sociopathic brilliance and ice-cold ruthlessness. We simply refuse to stop searching until we expose this monster relentlessly tracking their secret identity down through discarded shopping slips, digital tower signals, overheard whispers, or microscopic biological traces hidden within a discarded glove. From this heartbreaking story, the deepest lesson is that safety should never be taken for granted, especially for the elderly. A home is supposed to be a place of peace, dignity, and rest. When that sense of security is broken, it does not only harm one person, it shakes an entire family and an entire community. Nancy's story reminds us that older adults are not invisible. They are precious lives filled with memories, faith, sacrifice, and love. They deserve protection, attention, and respect every single day. In a fast-moving world, it is easy to assume that someone else is checking in, someone else is watching, someone else will notice danger. But real care begins when ordinary people choose to be present. This is why communities must become more compassionate and alert. A caring phone call, a watchful neighbor, a secure camera, a verified worker, or a small act of concern can become the difference between tragedy and protection. Evil often depends on silence, isolation, and routine. Goodness fights back through awareness, unity, and courage. The true message is simple but powerful. Protect the vulnerable, cherish your loved ones, and never underestimate the value of paying attention. Sometimes love is not just a feeling, it is protection in action.